Hey everyone, welcome back to my next art book preview video. This week we have the Art of Top Cow Legacy. The one that I've got here is the paperback version, but you can get this in hardcover. So a quick look at the front and back. You might be able to tell this is a very thick book. The dimensions are also pretty big too. A lot of big artist names on the back. Let's get into it. Okay, so starting with the contents, feel free to pause the video and take a proper look through this. I'm a little bit familiar with Witchblade and a few of these others, but then there's a few that I've not really heard of, or maybe I've come across them before, but I'm not familiar with them. There is also an older Art of Top Cow book that has this on the cover. So if you already own that one, I would be very interested in hearing your thoughts on that, because I've nearly bought that a few times, but then this one I saw was releasing, so I decided to go for this instead. Okay, so we can see right off the bat, starting with Witchblade, we have this stunning sort of like black and white inkwork, but we've also got like the logo designs for the comics and stuff, which is pretty cool. I do apologise, by the way, if the lighting is not the best. It's really difficult to record these, especially on sunny days like today, and especially this book is so big that with it being a paperback version, it kind of like flops, so some parts of the page might pick up the lighting. I always do my best to edit them though, and, you know, up the contrast and stuff. This is a really stunning piece of work. I've seen this before online. That's by J. Scott Campbell. I do own quite a lot of J. Scott Campbell's work, or at least his art books, I should say, so I will put links to some of those in the description box below the video. Definitely an incredible comic book artist, so definitely check that out. Okay, so throughout this book, I've only glanced through it because it just arrived this morning, but we're going to see not only like finished covers, full renders, but we're going to see for some of them the inking work for them, and also like the pencils, the preliminary work. We're going to see a little bit of like concept art or character design, things like that. And we're also going to see like some turnarounds and some panels, as we saw earlier on. So that means it is a full colour version, but as I say, you know, if it's an inked one or a pencil one, there's going to be no colour on those. This one actually blew my mind a little bit. I only received it this morning and I wasn't really sure what to expect. I'm quite familiar with some of the artists. Some of them I absolutely love, but then there's some that I'm not familiar with, so I was a little bit unsure. I always think, you know, when there's a lot of artists in a book like this, it sometimes means that, you know, there's probably some that you're going to like and some you're not going to like. But overall, I was really impressed with this one. And so one name that comes up a lot is Michael Turner, who unfortunately is not with us anymore. But he did some really good work around this sort of era. I remember being a kid, and Witchblade kind of reminds me of, even though I'm not a comic book guy now massively, as a kid I did have some Tomb Raider crossovers with like Witchblade and stuff, so it just reminds me of that. It makes me think of that, and it's very reminiscent to me of like Michael Turner's work. In fact, I just got this one through in the same order this morning, so I'm going to record this one straight after the Marvel art of Michael Turner. So if this kind of like comic book art style is your kind of thing, you might want to check that out. That's really cool. But as mentioned, it does have a range of styles. I'm not familiar with this artist, but I remember seeing this in a preview myself, and it kind of reminds me of like an Adam Hughes or even like a Terry Dodson style, which is one of my favourites actually, so I'm really pleased that that's in there. Yeah, as I say, some of the work has really sort of beat my expectations for this one. The page count is over 300 pages for this. So yeah, definitely a huge book overall. As mentioned, the actual dimensions, it's not quite square, but it's not far off. It's definitely a little bit wider than most. Another artist that features quite heavily throughout this is an artist that I'm going to butcher the name of, but when I looked online, I think he's pronounced Stjepan Sejic. His work is just absolutely incredible. I've never been able to understand how anyone can render work like this, and I've kind of been hoping that he would release an art book for a lot of years now. Another really cool J. Scott Campbell one. That's on the front of a convention sketchbook of his, I believe. Yeah, so I've been hoping that Stjepan, if that's how you pronounce it, again, sorry to the artist, I've been hoping that he'd release one for a lot of years, and I've still not seen one. So I think this is probably one of the closest that you can get to owning his work in an art book. So definitely a good investment. Another one of his pieces here. It always kind of blew my mind, the detail on Witchblade. I could never really figure out how any artist could actually draw that much detail. Anyway, I'm going to skip some sections ahead, more from the artist that I mentioned here. I mean, it's incredible. Yeah, so the next section is Darkness. I've seen this comic come up quite a lot, but as mentioned, I'm not really a comic book guy, so I'm not really familiar with them. Although this one here kind of reminds me a little bit of like a Darksiders Joe Mad design, you know, the video games. But anyway, I'm going to start skipping through because there's just loads of pages in this one. So yeah, we've got more pencil work, more inking work. Again, like panels to the comic book. This one's again for darkness. Range of artists. I mean, I'd be interested to know from you guys if you leave me a comment below. Any details about any of these comics, any of these artists, because I always love learning from you guys. You always let me know in the comments. So this is really stunning. I love seeing work like this where you've got this sort of finished, what I assume is a cover, along with seeing the inks or preliminary pencils, whatever you want to call it. I think that's really cool. I love books that do that. It reminds me of like a Frank Cho book where you've got the pencils on one side and the finished render on the other. Again, I really need to start skipping more pages at a time. But yeah, I received this morning, had a little bit of time to record, wanted to get this out there whilst it's still new so that you guys can have a look and hopefully decide if it's one that you guys want to buy or not. I will put links in the description box below to where you can get the book from. So if you buy anything through my links, it does earn me usually just like a couple of pennies. So not a lot, but it all helps out in supporting the channel. So please know if you've ever bought anything through any of my links or are planning on in the future, it really helps me out a lot. So yeah, thank you. And I'll mention this one, although it's not the same style. This one I just finished filming again this morning because I got it through in the same order. And that's Gwent, the Art of the Witcher card game. That one is much more painterly, so less comic book than this one. But it's still very sort of like dark arts. It's a little bit what I would probably describe as almost gory or grotesque monsters. Anyone who's familiar with video games and The Witcher will probably know what to expect from that one. But again, I'll put links to anything like that in the description box below, related books, any playlists. I've got like, I don't know, 250 art book videos now, so you definitely find something you like. Again, another really detailed piece. I refer to these as like epic pieces where they've got so many characters in. Anyway, guys, I'm starting to ramble. I've shown loads of the book, so hopefully you can judge whether this is one you want. I actually was really surprised by how good it is, so I would recommend this one. If you did enjoy the video, please do subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out and means I can keep making more content like this. Thank you for watching.